Hey, my friends, and welcome to the Life Switch Show. I'm Adam Kavalik. I'm your host of this show, and my guest today is Rod Blanchard, and you're going to get to hear his story a bit more shortly. And before we begin, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the notification bell to be notified of new episodes. And of course, you can follow me on my Facebook page, Adam Kavalik, Life Coach. All right, see you next. Hey, welcome, Rod.
How you doing, buddy? How are you?
I am good. I am very good. How are you?
I'm great. It's a beautiful day, but it's a little bit cold out. But yeah, I'm doing amazing. I'm tip top, buddy. I'm happy to be on the show.
I am glad to have you here. And before I really let you in, I kind of wanted to give just a brief introduction for anyone who's joining right now and listening to this episode. So Rod Blanchard lives in beautiful Canada. Therefore, it's a beautiful day, but it's slightly cold. And he lives there with his even more beautiful family. Rod's a professional recruiter finding talent for multi-billion companies. And he has a personal journey that I've felt super excited about to share with you guys. It's an inspirational journey. It's a journey that really, really helps people to kind of get into their mindset of like being their best selves. And Rod has had this situation in his life where he felt frustrated, frightened, stressed out, and at times just simply bored with his circumstances. And it was during that point where he decided to pick himself up and decide to stand for something more meaningful, more meaningful future with his family. And he created this lifestyle brand that he calls Just Rise. Now, I'm going to have to allow Rod to tell us about that. But I kind of want to give this very, very brief introduction to my good friend, Rod.
Thanks. That's you said it beautifully. And, I'll start there. I guess it's just as you said, it's falling down, picking yourself up, getting kind of bored with the output. Or the output that I was putting out. And I realized that I needed to change a number of things. It first started off with change, and then I realized it was more about connecting and less about changing. And I kind of look at it as, like a triangle, so to speak. And you have your knowledge, you have your efforts, and you have your system. And that's where I think the magic started to happen, because I'm somebody who was always, hey, the effort is there. I'll kind of jump in on anything and everything. That type of personality can often strike out just because you don't put a whole lot of knowledge into it. It's just going to jump in, both feet, I'm ready. And then there's the other side where you kind of go a little too deep, and it's all about, okay, what can I do? What's the knowledge? Digging deep into books and podcasts and different things. And I realized that, yeah, that's all great, but where it really kind of hit home for me was the knowledge around who I was. And I'll kind of explain that a little bit. Where I'm 47 now, I feel like I met myself last year, which is crazy. It's kind of a mind twist there, but I started doing this morning routine called Just Rise because I needed something else. I needed to, come to my day with more purpose and more intention, not chasing my tail every single day. And that's where I kind of found myself through meditation and you can call it meditation, you can call it a number of different things. But with me, it was really spending some time with my thoughts. And that's, it sounds easy enough. There's some discomfort there sometimes, but if I can give anybody any advice, is you got to lean into it a little bit. And that's really where you find the secret sauce, so to speak. And that's where I was able to find what works for me. And we can obviously get into that a little bit more in detail. But that's where the system counted. It really came into place. And I started hashtagging Just Rise, and it became something that I stood for. I was excited about, and that's where I am today. And again, I still have my recruiting business that I love, that I enjoy. We've talked about it at length in the past that there's a lot of similarities with Just Rise. I mean, from a professional level to a personal level. On the recruiting side, it's obviously helping people rise to the top. And now I've carried that over into Just Rise and helping people, find the best version of themselves, so to speak, if that makes all sense.
Yeah. It's. I mean, you've already said so many great things. I think we really need to unpack that. So let me just, from what I know about you, from what I've seen about you, like, to me, you're an inspiration. You're saying, like, 47 years old. That's the time when you met yourself. Like, when I look at you, imagining you being 47, 48 years and just like in that amazing shape, like, because I know your background is in sports. You're a performer. Like, you can really perform hard and well, and you can push yourself. So it's not like, I mean, as you said, you talked about a triangle of effort, knowledge, and system.
Yeah.
To me, you don't seem like being a stranger to effort. Like, you can really put the effort in. Am I right?
Yeah, no, you're bang on right, for sure.
And yet, I mean, having that, and because I kind of want to go back, but I kind of have to do this, Rod. Like, I actually asked my production team, Cruise Creative, to do something for me. When I look at you, I kind of go like, that guy is a perfect replacement for, I don't know if you follow the Marvel movies and the heroes on our movie screens, but like, right. I'm looking at you going like, that guy is the Winter Soldier. So if they ever decided to replace Sebastian Stan, I know who should be replacing him, right? Honestly, Sebastian Stan has nothing on you, Rod. So yeah, well, thank you, Agata, for that.
You know what? It's so funny that you put that up there.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that, I always ask people to do as well when trying to find the best version of themselves. And we are gonna, always come up against hurdles and decisions and choices, and finding your superhuman. Like, somebody that makes really solid choices, that's a superhuman. Like, that's your superhuman power. So, I had read this book called The Best Self, I believe it was. And I love it because there's a lot of actionable items there that you can kind of take away and do. And one of them I did with my 5 and 6-year-old or 7-year-old. And it was creative, where you have to create this kind of Marvel character. And, when you come up against these choices, you want to reflect back on, okay, this person that you've created in your mind, what would they do in this decision? Like, what would they do? And so it's funny. It's so funny that you put that there. So this was, I keep this in my planner. But this is like, so this is my here. It's called, Care Bear Man.
Yeah.
So it looks, but anyways, that's the person that I go to. And if I open that up really quickly, it's loving, present, patient, open, I would say, understanding, strong, committed, non-judgmental, kind, and funny. I mean, these are the characteristics that I want my kids to see in me. And that's another big thing with where I am now and where I want to go. I realized I got kind of comfortable on letting myself down. You kind of wanted to achieve something, and along the way you hit a ripple, you hit a wall, anything that, that kind of stops you from achieving what you wanted to do. And, I would consider that kind of falling on your face. And there's a lot of energy there spent on picking yourself up and sometimes ruminating in that negativity. And I realized that, I was giving my kids, my family, what was left of Rod, which wasn't much. I mean, I was like, kind of scurrying away, kind of picking myself up, spend half the week, trying to get back to where I was. And that's where I said to myself, it's not acceptable anymore. Like, I mean, I need to give all of me. And that's where I really found, again, coming back to the morning routine, is when I looked at it, I found myself, I was calm, I was patient, I was loving, like all these
Mm.
great characteristics. How do I bring that from my morning routine throughout the day?
Mm.
Because again, in the mornings, you start that off and you're putting almost this armor on. And throughout the day, it's, that armor is, getting a little thinner by the day,
Mm.
or by the hour, I should say. And that's where, I feel if there's some intention in me when I wake up in the morning, and my intention is to bring that person, for the full day, give my family all of me.
Mm.
So that's really kind of the other thing that really sparked where I'm at today,
Yeah.
and what has me so excited. Yeah.
That's good. I love that. I mean, it's kind of like, I like how you have these characteristics, written down in your planner, having this idea, this vision of yourself as the best self. I mean, one of the things that I sometimes talk about is like, a power plant doesn't have energy; it generates energy.
Right.
And we can be that power plant. Like, if you don't have motivation, you can generate it, because you can be as a power, like a power plant. And,
Right.
rather than sitting waiting to feel motivated, no, you go generate it. Rather than waiting to become whatever it is, no, go generate it. And I think, what you shared from your planner sounds like you've got a clear vision of who you want to be, for your kids, for your family, for your friends, and relationships around you, and you generate that.
Right.
And again, I'm just saying, how you quickly dove into that. I think it's such a useful tool for anyone listening right now. How getting clear on the best self and
Right.
making that commitment, I think is brilliant. Now,
Yeah.
Just
And I think
Rise.
it's,
Yeah, you go.
yeah. And again, where we look at, our thoughts and our energy. And really, when we look at the pain and discomfort that we have, it really is seasonal. It's going to go away. The only time that it stays is it's in your mind.
Mm,
And I think that's where, again, everyone talks about, how negativity, the negative thoughts are way more powerful than positive thoughts, in a bad way. It's trying to find that neutral space. Like, how can I be in that neutral space, in that calming place? Because, sometimes, like what we're currently in, I mean, with COVID and the pandemic,
mm,
and we're up against a lot of stuff. But if you have the mindset in more of a neutral state, hey, we're dealing with this. I mean, we can't change this. And that's where I feel like, even with myself, I'm looking at, okay, there's certain things that I reflect back on, because even when it comes to just rise, it's like rise, reflect, and recharge. Those are the three kind of things that I work on. I
mm,
understand in the past I can't change the facts, but I can kind of look at where I am today. I can look at the past, and it's a different perspective. And that's pretty powerful. I really believe that if you can kind of look back and say, what can I do better? Is there certain things that maybe I looked at in such a negative lens, or a light, and now, as I continue this journey of finding the best version of myself, or being the best me, I think you can kind of look back and reflect and learn and grow, if that makes any sense.
it does. It really does. I think it's again, one of the things that I truly believe, when I was working as a leader for IKEA, a lot of times I'd be a mentor for the new leadership. And hungry young leaders, they would all ask the one and the one and the same question: how can I get your job? How can I replace you? Right? They were,
Right.
which is honorable. And I'd always say the same thing. I would always give them the same advice: reflect. Because it's through the reflection, by reflecting, you can actually convert, you can transform your experience into skills.
Right.
Skills you can depend on, skills you can train, skills you can use in in time and time and over. Because I know people who have created a certain outcome in life. They just don't know how. They don't know why it happened the way it did. They think they're lucky, or they think they're just blessed. And one day they will, as you said before, they will run into this brick wall
Right.
with not really understanding maybe what happened. Why am I here? How do I deal with this? Because they never actually stopped. And I mean, I'm not saying to only reflect on your challenges or your failures or your fall downs. No, reflect on your successes as well.
Right. Right. And
How otherwise will you know how to get up?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And another thing that we've discussed in the past as well, and this is again when you're looking back and trying to figure out what's important to you, and obviously your alignment and your intentions, all these great things is, I mean, everyone is looking to be, they're looking for internal happiness, but at the same time, and we've talked about this, at length in the past. Like, what is happiness? Have you defined happiness? Like, if I look back even on the recruiting side of my business, I meet hundreds of candidates. I speak to hundreds of candidates a month. And it blows my mind that like some candidates are just, they're coming to me to help them find happiness. They've got no clarity, which is, I can move them from one place to another, but it's not going to fulfill them. So, I mean, obviously I make more money if that happens, but really, my success is built on putting the right person in the right place. So it's trying to say, hey, take it a step back. Is it money? Is it career progression? What are the things that are going to help you? What are going to fulfill you? So I think that's a huge thing as well, is really defining, what happiness means to you.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, you had this. Okay, so before I go there, because I'm just dying to do that, I still want to know, Just Rise, as a brand, as a philosophy. To me, it's almost like it's got a double meaning, and it might even have more meanings than that, because help me, correct me if I'm wrong. It is about picking yourself up if you have a fall, and it's also about getting up in the morning, as you said before, the system, the morning routine. Can you take us back maybe a year or two when this idea of Just Rise kind of started for you?
Yeah, and this is where I feel like I've done a lot of legwork for the brand and where things are at currently. Last year was really a massive year for me. That's the year that I decided I needed to change, and I needed to connect, and I needed to look for some answers. And I found that in my morning routine. But the big thing here was, if somebody would have told me, okay, you're going to get up in the morning at 5 a.m. every day for 45 days, it's going to be about sobriety. So you're not drinking. You're going to write. You're going to reflect. I'm not a writer. I don't enjoy writing. I'm starting to enjoy it. But if somebody would have said that, I would have packed up my bag and head the other way. But it was my own personal journey. It was my personal choice. And I decided to start getting up in the morning and sitting there reflecting. And here's the beauty of it. Like, the barrier of entry to Just Rise is just that, just rise. Like, just rise. Like, some people are ready to layer on a number of things. But if you're not ready for that, just rise and spend some time with yourself. Like, I get up extra early because I enjoy sitting there, visualizing. And that is such a beautiful, if I decide, okay, hey, I'm going to, at 1 o'clock each day, sit and I'm going to visualize, there's a lot of distractions. Lots of things are going on. But at 5 a.m., it's very quiet. You have your time. So take it back. I was visualizing, I started writing. And, as I continued to write, I found myself, and I found myself reflecting back and was getting more excited by the day. And so I realized through those 45 days, and I called it 45 Alive, because after those 45 days, I was alive. I was on top of the world. Here's the problem. Is my 45 days after it finished, all of the distractions that I was trying to get past, remove from my life, I got past them, and I thought, wow, I'm going to reward myself for a job well done. But all those things that I was trying to avoid is what my reward was. So it was really twisted. so so again, I don't know about you, Adam, but I'm huge on momentum, like most people, and my momentum was high. I rewarded myself the wrong way, and it dipped, and then I went back into another 45, and so it was kind of up and down last year. But this year has been a real eye opener, and I really feel like throughout meditation, which I do in the morning, I have a program that I have a good friend of mine. It's called Rewire with Brian Coons.
Mm.
Um, he's helped me kind of open my eyes, and I love to use the word trust, but it really is. I mean, any relationship that you're in, trust is the pillar. And with right now where I'm at, I'm really starting to trust the process. It's
Mm.
starting to feel more natural. But again, these things wouldn't be in place if I didn't do the legwork earlier. If I didn't figure out deep down what happiness really meant to me.
Mm.
And everybody looks at self-development, but another big one, right, for me anyways, is self-awareness. Is at the end of the day, you get to the end of the day, and like you're constantly thinking, was that a productive day? How was that day? But if you don't take kind of that look at sorry, the awareness of what things felt great, what things kind of felt a little icky. I think that's really where you're able to gauge a lot more.
So, okay, so you had this 45-day challenge to begin with. You rewarded yourself with a very few things that you kind of restricted while you were on your 45-day challenge, and it got a little bit back and forth. And this year, you've had a much more consistent momentum. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned again this to define and self-awareness. Why is this, defining your best self and having self-awareness as a tool to navigate, kind of like that's what I'm getting from this. Why is that important? Like if someone's listening right now going like, wow, I want to do a 45 challenge.
Right.
I want to just rise.
Well, I think that's where, if I were to say to you, okay, Adam, or if I took 100 people and said, this is what we're going to do for the next 45 days, and I listed a bunch of things, there's going to be a small portion or a percentage of that 100 that are going to be, hey, I'm in. Just because it's not speaking to them. I mean, like, I think Simon Sinek hit it on the head. Like when he wrote that book, it starts with the why. And I write that all over the place now, like in the gym, in my office, just why. Like, why am I doing this? Why is it important? Especially right now. I mean, the why is really, really important because, every day kind of feels like the same day. So why am I getting up? Like, why do I give a fuck? Sorry. It really, but it really does start with the why. And that's where I feel like now that I'm crystal clear on where I want to go. And that's again where with Just Rise and that 45-day challenge is you got to figure out what's going to speak to you. Why are you deciding at this point in your life to stand up and just rise? And there's a lot of people right now that do. They are part of the 5 a.m. club and they're up at 5 a.m. But there's a portion of those people that I talk to that are in my network of really great friends that are CEOs of companies. They're up at 4, but they're working at 4. They're not taking the time. I mean, like, it's like, if you can just spend some time, I mean, like, an hour a day with yourself and your thoughts, before you get into the hustle and bustle of the day, I think that's where kind of the magic is.
Yeah. It reminds me of, I can't remember who said this, but it's like win the first hour in the morning and win the day, and you win the day, something like that.
Right.
So, I mean, okay, so I know because I've had this conversation with you, but you created those pods of groups of people where you did like boot camps. You got together and you actually did, exercises and stuff together for those 45 days. You even launched a 45 meditation challenge, didn't you?
Right. Yeah, I think it was really last year before the pandemic when we could get together. It was really, I realized pretty quickly how important the community was when you're doing these things. and especially getting up, and not everybody's a morning person. And you're getting up and it's, minus 20 out. It's still very dark. If you don't have that support group and you're not a morning person, you're probably going to spend 3 or 4 days and then kind of go back to your old habits. But we kind of kept each other accountable. And it really kind of started off as all you have to do is kind of check in the morning. Hey, I'm up, and we have this kind of big chat going on. But it only took probably 2 weeks in when people were, starting to talk about how they were feeling. And they started reflecting on a number of things, but it just opened up the dialogue, and people started pouring their hearts out on what things, how Just Rise, was helping them, kind of conquer the day, as you said. And I mean, the last challenge that we had, it wasn't meant to be a running challenge, but 5 out of the people out of that group decided to run the marathon. Me included, which was a huge thing for me last year. I mean, I'm 230 pounds. I'm not a marathon kind of, body, so to speak. But it was one of those things that I believe 2 years ago, even if I signed up for it, I believe I probably would have got through halfway, like where at the halfway mark, I was like, oh man, my hip is on fire. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. But I just thought to myself, I'm going to feel much better just crawling across that finish line because I've finished it. And I'm starting to see, like, things that are even from a professional side. I mean, everything is kind of in the same world right now where, anything that I start, I want to finish. Where before it would be start, fall down, start, pick yourself up. So that's been a big motivator for me.
And again, that ties into kind of your mindset for this year, where you've built this momentum, this consistency, and you're building on that all the time. I mean, so because you mentioned very early on when we started talking, this triangle of effort, knowledge, and system.
Right.
Is there a way to explain that in a way that if someone's listening, they can use that for themselves in order to maybe get into that state of, just rising or making some change in their own life?
Yeah, well, I think it all kind of starts, as I said. I mean, you have to, kind of sit and spend some time with yourself and figure out kind of what the effort you're prepared to put out. Because there is, once again, there's a ton of things. I mean, we can Google it right now and find, 500,000, different workouts in the morning to kind of get you going and get you moving. But I feel like if you can just take a deep dive for, 45 minutes, and you sit there and figure out what's going to be important to you. What are you trying to achieve? Looking at the why, looking at all the things that we've discussed. And I mean, that's where all the knowledge is coming in of what's important to me. And at that point, it's like, okay, now what's the effort that I have to put out? And am I prepared to do that? And that's really where, kind of you're laying all of this information out. And I call it the system, but that's where, my morning routine works for me. And there's even last year when we did these challenges, I mean, there are people in the group that were just rising. They weren't participating in some of the boot camps and, some of the running and, meditation and such. They just wanted to get up and spend some time with themselves, but it was a start, and it was a start in the right direction.
Yeah, and that's what I like about this, that it's, in a way, this system of yours or this, mindset, it really is adaptable to where you are. And that this is why I think the potential for this is so great. So you just said something that really triggered something for me. I just wanted to bring that up. Hang on. Well, I'll probably come back to it. I mean, so tell me a little bit more about who do you like. Just Rise. How is this helpful? Okay, let me say it like this. There is a famous quote by, in the movie of Rocky, where he says, it's not about how many times you get knocked down. It's about how many times you get back up again. Something like that, right?
Right.
So how can Just Rise matter to people? Why is this Just Rise so important to you, to people?
And here's where it really becomes a starting point. I think people need, some motivation. I want to look at, when I think of Just Rise, I want it to be a place where people come for answers. They come for a community. They come because they want to change what they've been doing. They want to come because they want to connect a little bit more with themselves. And I think, again, I mean, where I look at Just Rise, it really is a starting point. Where it goes, that's completely up to you. I'm going to give you the tools and also, the downloads where to help you follow along. I mean, I feel like there's, hey, I've completed a 45-day journey. What's the next challenge? And continuing to push yourself a little further each and every time. And I mean, I feel like even with Just Rise, if you see the apparel side of it, there is a man, kind of the motivational man, but it's just a constant reminder to remind you that you're not alone. Once you start digging deep and figuring things out, and some of the things that make you feel a little bit vulnerable, we're all kind of going through these things. And I think that was where it was an eye opener for me as well. I always had this, imposter syndrome. They're going to figure me out. I'm just going to, let me just kind of stay, kind of here under the radar. But we're all in the same boat. I mean, and I think at this point in my life, I would rather ask the questions. I don't care anymore. I mean, I'm ready. I want to learn. I want to accept. So that's where, I feel like there's a big opportunity for people, the masses really is to decide, hey, I'm going to just rise tomorrow. And that's how easy it is. I think the one big thing, right now we're in February, and I think this is kind of like the separation month, where everybody came out of the gates in January. And where are they right now? And this is where I feel like you can kind of separate yourself from the competition, because, if you can start to push a little bit harder in February, and even when it comes to separating yourself from yourself, is what didn't work back then. How can I push a little bit higher? I mean, and here's where I always say, I mean, it speaks to everyone in a different way. A challenge that's hard for me might be easy for you. I'll use an example of I run with one of my buddies, and, when it comes to going out for a social gathering, he doesn't need, he looks at drinking like, no, I'm okay. And I'm like, I look at him like, wow, that's brilliant. I love it. Where if I walk into a bakery after a run with him, he's leaving with a baker's dozen. I'm not a big donut guy. I mean, if you say, hey, Rod, you can't eat donuts for the rest of your life. Okay, that's cool. But once again, I mean, it's just because, so it's just figuring out, what's your kryptonite? What are the things that are going to speak to you? How can we get over these hurdles? We can do it together. We don't always have to be on the same path. And I feel like that's where myself anyway is I've followed the path of somebody else. They were very successful doing it this way. So let me do it. And then I'll get halfway through it. I'm like, this is not working for me. Is it me? No, it's not. It's because I decided to follow behind somebody else and not, just kind of pave my own path, so to speak. And that's where I really, again, want people to realize that Just Rise, I'm not going to sit and tell people you have to do this, 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 and this. The only thing that I say when we enter these challenges is if you can commit to waking up at 5 a.m. for the next 45. So just rise for the next 45. Can you do it? You're in. So that's where it starts.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I mean, again, you're saying this again, that defining your own happiness, defining your own path is really important, because otherwise you risk following someone else's blueprint and, it might not be for you.
Right.
So I think, I definitely think that is super important.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Sorry, just on another note as well, if what has helped me with reflecting and building and creating this new rod, so to speak, is I kind of look at things now if I look at the Care Bear man, where, what would he do in this situation? Now, even today, this is not comfortable for me. I'm not a good speaker. I don't enjoy it. And I think to myself now, it's like, is what I'm up against, if somebody asks me to do something, is it life-threatening or is it ego-threatening? 99% of the time, it's ego-threatening. I'm not going to sound good enough. I'm not going to look good enough. I'm going to still be here. Like after this call, I like no one's going to show up at my door and take my life. This is not life-threatening. So that's where I feel like you can't grow unless you drop the ego a little bit, and kind of just throw it to the wind and say, you know what, I'm going to improve. I'm going to continue doing. I'm going to rise to the challenge. And that's where things start to carry over a little bit. Just because if somebody doesn't rise that morning and they didn't feel like, hey, I felt like that morning I knocked it out of the park. You're going to have an opportunity to rise throughout the day. If anything in life, be a better husband, be a better father, a son, a friend, a coworker, a boss. You have the opportunity to just rise in the face of adversity. So that's where I think, it's really, when you look at just rise, there's a lot of opportunity throughout the day to make your mark, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's exactly because, as you said now, that, dropping a little bit of the ego, because I would, based on what you're saying about the ego, it's the ego that's afraid to look bad.
Right.
And if you drop that, because, hey, that might happen sometimes. People might not always approve of you or what you do. It might not always be the best thing that happened. And because there's always this opportunity to just rise, like you might fall, that might happen. The ego sees that as a life-threatening situation, but it's really not. Right? It's just thinking that way makes it super scary.
Right.
And when you transcend that a bit, you move beyond that a bit, and you realize that, hey, I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to be fine. Why? Because it's not about how many times you get knocked down. It's about how many times you get back up.
Right. No, exactly.
And in that, we are strengthening ourselves. I mean, even looking back on last year's, on-off kind of, struggle that you might have had with the 45 days challenges, rewarding yourself with the wrong kind of things. I mean, it's kind of like, even if you had that a little bit, like that rubber band thing, this year you're stronger.
Right.
So again, you're kind of proving your own thesis here with, it's not about if you fall, it's really about that you rise again.
Yeah.
And as you're doing that, as you do that many times over, you get stronger.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And there's going to be things that you pick up, and I'm going to bring it back to meditation.
Yeah.
If somebody had said to me, for the next 45 days, you're going to meditate, and this is going back a year and a half ago, I would have been like, I don't know, man. Like I've tried it. I feel it's uncomfortable. I can't sit for very long. I got a million things racing through my mind. But I've realized, and this is going through the Rewire program that I worked with my buddy on, but it really helped me. Like I used to think, here's an example. I would be doing some meditation. I feel like this is great. I can see this, helping me. And then throughout the day, you're thrown adversity and you're up against something and you react. And it's a react that is like, feels shitty. Like you just like, why do they say that? Why do they react like that? This is not working. Well, yeah, it is working because now I'm mindful of it. Like, and this is where I really started to realize things that, okay, so why did I feel like that? Why did I get my back up? Why did that kind of fight or flight kind of, hey, I better get on my defense here. I didn't need to do that. I'm starting to learn now to kind of turn that narrative down, so to speak, where sometimes I would be in a difficult situation and that narrative would just spin it, three-way Sunday where it's like, man, like I can't even think. And then again, and now I'm blowing up. And I think a lot of people, when they go that route and they don't sit back and say, okay, why did that happen? Why did I react like that? How can I improve the next time around? Where again, a few years back, I would get to the point where, okay, that's great. Kind of get through the day, have some dinner, have a glass of wine. Now you're kind of forgetting, and that's where it became a little bit detrimental to me, because I wasn't learning. There was no self-awareness. So that's where I've grown, and this year as well. Like coming out of the gates last year at a 45-day sobriety challenge. I said, why 45 days? Like, I decided, this is the year of 2021 that I'm going to, kind of really accomplish the things I'm set out to do. And I'm going to do that without drinking. I mean, having, that sobriety for 2021 was a decision that I made that I was comfortable making. I was ready. Where I think a lot of people, they jump into, I'm going to do this. But they haven't really kind of thought about the reasons why they're doing it. And with me, I did a lot of soul searching. There's many things that I tried, life hacks of, okay, what if I try this? Maybe I can kind of bring this in. No, it's not working. You know what I mean? So just kind of exit out of the equation, move on. And I think we've talked about this before as well, is start to look at the gains opposed to things that you're missing out on.
Oh, yeah.
Gains, well, I mean, it's, it definitely outweighs some of the things that I thought I was missing out on.
Well, that's an interesting point. I mean, you and I, we've had that conversation. But I'm interested, if you can expand on that a bit. Like, what does that mean to focus on your gains versus what you're losing out on?
And even when I look back at when I think of how I was being a parent, a father. And there's some beautiful moments of, when I was, by the fire, we're doing some homework, whatever it may be, and I'm having a glass of wine. What's wrong with There's nothing wrong with that. But it was, with me, it wasn't, hey, I drank way too much. It's just the anxiety going into drinking, and then, kind of the shame that I felt afterwards for whatever reason. But it was something internally that said, it just doesn't work for me. So I spent a lot of time and effort and energy into the wrong things. So just removing that, I show up and you're getting all of me, where before, again, when I used to think of going out for a social drink with friends, a long time ago, it was a lot of excitement. It's great. I'm going to see my buddies and, we're going to have a couple of drinks. There's nothing wrong with that. But I got to the point where I wasn't thinking about the night of drinking. I was thinking about the day waking up and picking myself up, which is not a good place to be. I just decided it just doesn't serve me anymore. I'm comfortable moving on, and there's other things that I can fill that void with. So it is what it is, but it feels good.
No, I like that. I mean, again, you've been very clear about that throughout this conversation, that the why is important.
Right.
Because it's the why that is kind of the fuel for that vehicle to move forward. And this is just, to me, it's almost like just another way of getting into that why. Because, why do you want to do this? Why is this important? It's almost like when you create that why, don't overly focus on what you're, losing out on.
Right.
Instead, focus on what you'll be gaining. The connection, the authenticity, the strength, the integrity, whatever it is, and remembering that. Because sometimes, when I started out coaching, I started with health coaching, and that actually built on my own personal journey from being very overweight and overstressed and not sleeping well, not having great diet routines or anything. And changing all of that and kind of wanting to give back to other people wanting the same. It's so easy to look at the things that you can't have because you're on a diet or because you're doing this. And you're forgetting how great it feels to feel healthy.
Right.
How great it feels to feel strong, fast, more resilient than ever before. Or the connection with people at the gym or the spinning class or whatever it is. And I think sometimes it's so much more powerful to focus on, again, what we gain
Right.
versus what we lose out on.
Right. No, I 100% agree. Um, and even when it comes to looking back again, I'm talking about, reflecting, and I always kind of I thought this was my identity. So this is where you're kind of at a paradigm where you're thinking to yourself, okay, this is where I want to go. These are the things that I need to do. These are the things I'm going to gain. But I don't want to just completely lose who I was in the past. Like there's a lot of great things that Rod represented. And I'm not trying to say, hey, I'm going to completely flip me over and dump out completely Rod, and there's going to be a new Rod that pops out the other end. But at the same time, it's like, figuring out what is your true identity. And you have this, I call it kind of, many people call this like, you have this code in your head. And if you kind of follow that code and you think you can't crack that code and you can't now rewire that code, you're going to be doing the same thing each and every time. And there's no different output because you're putting the same in. But I feel like once you realize what your true identity is, and with me, I always thought, okay, people want this from me. No, they don't. No, that's in my mind. I made that shit up. So, so that's where I feel like, that's where I feel so strong this year. I'm having more, like, even, and I wrote about this last week, but like one of my good friends, like every weekend now we get up, it doesn't matter if it's -15, we meet at the hill, we have dumbbells in hand, and we sprint up and down the hill with dumbbells. And we talk about like really intellectual conversation that in a million years, like a few years back, I would have said, no, I don't see that. We're not going to have a conversation about the universe and us being like, but this is what's happening now. And I'm getting a lot more out of it, where it's just, it's beautiful, man. I really feel at home right now. I feel like I'm in harmony, so to speak. And that's one thing that even, having those conversations with my friend is being crystal clear. I mean, I've confused myself over the years. I want to be this, I want to do this. And now I'm really clear on my goals and my intentions and where I want to get to. And that's another thing as well. It's like, having that connection with the universe. This is going to sound a little bit deep, but again, you have to trust and you have to be deliberate. Like, what are you looking for? What are you asking for? Is it abundance? So that's where I've become, that connection is stronger than ever. I feel like I'm on the right path. And I guess that's where I want to share. Like, I'm not an expert in anything, but I would love to share, in some of the pitfalls, some of the things that, in the dark crevices of, my past, how I've overcome it, where I've picked myself up. And again, building that community where we can all pick each other up. Like when I did that 45-day journey really quickly, or 45-day challenge, there was people in that group that I respected and looked up to, very successful. When it came to boot camp, they would call him like, hey, Rod, what are we going to do in this boot camp? I'm really kind of concerned. I'm like, really? Where it's like, if I put them in front of like, 1,000 people and say, hey, stand up, I need you to, like, that's where I would feel uncomfortable. I'd be like, hey, dude, can you just kind of walk me through what's going to happen? So they would jump in on that stage. I would jump in on this stage. So how can we help each other and feel comfortable in both stages? So I feel like that's where the community is pretty powerful as well.
Yeah, I mean, of course, because we all have our moments to rise, how do you say that? There's always this opportunity to make a stand, take a stand and just rise for the occasion, to the occasion, right? And we all have that. So it's, as you said before, it's not about what you're rising for. It's for what I'm rising for, which is why figure it out. You need to spend that time and reflect on your purpose. Be deliberate about what it is you want out of life. And you were talking about this, how this code, and unless you crack the code, things are going to look very, very similar. I often talk about the autopilot. If you're living life on an autopilot, you're just coasting.
Right.
It's not. There's a beautiful movie. I don't know if you've seen it with Adam Sandler called Click. Do
Click.
you know it?
No, no, I don't.
Oh, it's a brilliant one. I
I'm
mean,
gonna,
not that I'm a super fan of Adam Sandler, but that is probably his best movie, I think. It's so I'm going to ruin the movie for anyone who's watching now. If you are just fast forward or whatever,
spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
and so he's given like a remote control by God, and with this remote control, he can skip through the boring parts of his life, which is great. Like, hey, I want to do that. So he started using this. Now, this control, though, is like an AI. So it starts learning the boring pieces. So it starts auto forwarding for him.
Right.
So he can basically, or it notices he skipped through an argument with someone. So then every time there's an argument, the control just going to skip through. So he starts realizing he's losing out on a lot of life scenarios. And, again, I'm not going to ruin the ending, but he gets to the end of that and realizes that, crap, like, that was life.
Right.
And I think that's why I love this movie, because it just, like, for being an Adam Sandler movie, I think it's brilliant. But there is something in that. Like, if you're living on autopilot that way, you're missing out on life.
Yeah, yeah. No, and what's the book, Atomic Habits, I believe it's called.
Atomic Habits, yeah. By James Clear.
James Clear.
Yeah.
And he wrote something the other day, and it kind of resonated, and it spoke to me with, getting comfortable with the boring parts of your life, right? And again, you can't take that part out. And it's boring because you think it's boring. But that's life. And I feel like that's where right now, as I say, feeling that alignment. I wake up a few times in the middle of the night, and I get this kind of feeling that comes over me. And it's a feeling of gratitude. And because I'm looking at this half lit house, the love that is in the house, when I look at the pictures on the wall, I feel like I'm blessed. And so again, this is where I feel like everyone has their complications. Everyone is dealing with a different scenario. And maybe it's easier for me to think of the positives or stay in that neutral frame. But wherever you're at, you really have to feel grateful and practice gratitude. And I'll use an example, like, even giving, showing somebody gratitude, where it's like last night we had like reading night in bed, and her 5-year-old wanted to be the teacher. So she's reading this book, and at the end she's like, I just want to thank you, students, for being with me. And it was just beautiful, right? I'm like, where is she getting this from? Because she's a good little, she's a good little actress, right? So I knew it was her Montessori teacher. So when I dropped her off at Montessori this morning, I said to her teacher, I'm like, you're making a difference. It was beautiful, and I shared that with her, and she almost teared up, which almost made me tear up. But it's just like, giving some love. It's a difficult time right now, and if there's anything that people can kind of take away, and like, it's not everyone is taking it the same way you are, and you kind of have to show a little bit more love, smile a little bit more, talk to people a little bit more, and I feel like, again, we're in a place of uncertainty, and I think it's everyone has to come together. And I think even with Just Rise, I used to think, hey, if our family could just rise, and then my friends and my network, and then, it becomes our whole neighborhood, and then it becomes, a country. And then now it's globally, like, we all have to just rise at some point and say, you know what, let's get on with it. So I think that's pretty powerful too.
That is amazingly powerful. All right. So we're closing up on the hour here. I have this question that I've asked some of my other guests, and I want to ask you the same question. Like, if you could go back to your 14, 15-year-old self and give yourself an advice, what would you tell yourself?
More self-compassion.
Yeah.
It's give yourself some self-love. I was one that was very, very hard on myself. I think it was a lot of self-sabotage where, I failed before I even moved on, and there were certain things that I was very, very good at, but I still just, in my eyes, I wasn't good enough. I didn't give myself enough self love. So I think that's probably where I would go back and kind of whisper in the ear.
I like that. I really do. I mean, that is definitely something I would do the exact same thing. That's what I would whisper in my, actually scream in my ear because I needed it. But it really is that, and I think so many people needs to hear that. I mean, one of our viewers right now, Annika, really inspiring. She's saying, right, and I think it is. I really think it is. So if anyone watching this, I think Rod, we would say the same things. Have some more self-love. That goes to a lot of people out there as well.
Yeah, 100%.
I really think it's a good advice. So, Rod, thank you very much. I kind of want to give people an opportunity to connect with you. So if they want to learn more about you, if they want to find their own ways or reasons to Just Rise, how can they connect?
Yeah, well, Instagram is definitely where I am, where I post a lot of content. My website has just gone up, which is www.justrise.com. It's just a start, and I feel like anything in life and what I've learned over the last year is you get it out there. I mean, it's not going to be perfect. I'm not perfect, but there's always room for improvement. But I want to get to the point where, even when it comes to the apparel, I don't want people to think of Just Rise as a nice fitting shirt, which it really is.
Yeah.
But it really is. It's like you've decided to just rise yourself. And every piece of apparel has that kind of motivational man on it. And that just sometimes reminds you, like, when you're, man, do I feel like working out? Do I feel like going the extra yards here? And you kind of see that and you're like, you know what, why not? And once you start, you kind of build that momentum, and next thing you know, you're an hour into something that you didn't want to do in the first place.
That's it. That's the power of that apparel and the logo and the lifestyle brand that you've created.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Rod. Like, I really, really enjoyed this episode. This hour just flew by. It's amazing how fast time can go. Thank you super much for being on the show. I hope that I can have you back in the future. Maybe we can go even further discussing your journey and the brand and everything that comes with that.
Yeah, I would love that. And keep doing what you're doing, Adam. I follow you, and I hear you loud and clear. I mean, you're so on point with a lot of stuff, and I enjoy listening to you, and I enjoy talking to you. So thanks a lot for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, Rod. Catch you soon, yeah? Well, thank you everybody who took their time to listen to this. I'm sure this was valuable. Like, I was I was super excited about this episode, and it wasn't for nothing. Clearly, this was a powerful one. So thanks for tuning in today. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the notification bell to be notified of the new episodes. And of course, you can follow me on Facebook. My Facebook page is Adam Kavalik Life Coach. And see you next week, same time, same place.